Okay.
If my internet's working, which it is. Hi everyone. Very happy to be talking to Leigh Russell tonight. Leigh, start us off an intro to you and your books.
Well, I write a police procedural series of crime thrillers. My detective is called Geraldine Steele, and we've just published the 22nd, I think, in the series. Here it is, Deadly Will. And I'm currently finished writing the 23rd in the series, which has gone off to my editor. So I'm just waiting to hear back, see what they think. And then I'm contracted to write one more. That will take us up to 24 in the series. I'm currently...
Sorry.
And...
Carry on.
And then, then we'll see where we go from there, whether I can think of any more ways to kill people. And I'm also writing a cozy crime series, which was inspired by my daughter's little rescue puppy. And the latest one in that has just come out this month. Hang on, hold around. Poppy's Christmas Cracker. So you can see her little Christmas hat there. And the sketches on the front are actually based, they're actually, my daughter draws them. They're little sketches of the real little dog, Poppy. So, so I'm quite busy writing. I also do some editing for other writers, which I really enjoy. And I go into university one day a week to support academics with their academic writing. So it's quite busy, really, just all writing and reading. That's my life, really. That and looking after my granddaughter, who likes to come and stay with us for 2 nights. So she's coming tomorrow night for a couple of nights. It's a busy life, really, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
Cool. So a Christmas book coming out. It's out quite early for a Christmas book.
Well, this is what happens, apparently. I mean, don't ask me. Yes, it seems very early to me. It's only September, isn't it? But I guess it gives people a chance to buy the book for Christmas presents. And if anybody's looking for a little stocking filler, Poppy's Christmas Cracker, all of my books, this is the 5th in the Poppy Mystery Tales, and this is the 22nd in my Geraldine Steele series. But each of my books works. I'm very careful to make each of my books work as a standalone. So there are readers who have read the previous books in the series and are just waiting for the next one to come out, which is great. But there are also a lot of people who haven't read any of my books, and they might pick up any one of my books anywhere in the series. And I feel very much that they want to enjoy the book just as much as someone who is a fan of the series. So I make sure that they all work as standalones, as well as being part of the series. So it's not that complicated to do, but it's just something to be aware of. When I started writing, I was really writing myself, just having fun, writing all the exciting bits. But I've learned on the job. I've now had about 40 novels traditionally published, which means that I have gone through a rigorous professional editing process myself as a writer nearly 40 times. And I've learned through being edited to write not just for myself, but to write for readers. And that's really, I think, crucial. When I'm teaching creative writing, I always work on that aspect of writing, that you're not just writing for yourself. You are writing for yourself, obviously, because it's fun and you enjoy writing, but you are also writing for your readers. And so I now write not just for myself, not just for one reader. I write for 2 readers. I write for fans of my series, and I'm also writing for new readers. So it's not that difficult to incorporate the 2, because I might say something like, my detective Geraldine was very pleased to be working with a pathologist again, because they'd worked on a number of cases before. And then people who are fans of the series who've met that character before are not bored by a whole long repetition about what he's like and all the rest of it. Whereas readers new to the series are put in the picture straight away that this is a pathologist that Geraldine trusts, and they have a bit of banter and they know one another. So it's just a question of being aware of these things, really. But although I'm writing, well, certainly my Geraldine Steele series is quite a long running series, I guess, at 23, 24 books. But they each work as a standalone. I think that's quite important. Personally, as a reader, I find it quite irritating if I read a book and then discover at the end that, oh, you've got to read the next book to find out what happens, because you want a book to give you some sense of closure at the end, I feel. So that's just my opinion.
I'm going to disagree. I quite like a good cliffhanger in a book. I like to sort of puzzle it out while I'm waiting for the next one to come out. We've got some hellos from Leslie, Sarah, and Malcolm. There are people who like Christmas stuff quite early, aren't there? Like, I'm pretty sure that I saw on my Facebook memories a while ago that my parents had discovered Christmas movies. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's a good chance from about October my parents have discovered Christmas movies.
And of course, people buy Christmas presents very early, don't they? I mean, my problem with doing that is that I then have to remember where I've put them by the time Christmas comes around. But then if you don't buy them early, then suddenly Christmas is upon us. I haven't got anything. I can't find anything. So yeah, it's I think it's a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? It's good to buy things early and have them done, but then you have to remember where they are.
Oh, I do the early thing, but only because we have about 10 family birthdays from like November to Christmas.
Oh goodness, we have 5 birthdays in July: 18th, 19th, 20th, 24th, and 31st, all in July. So we have a big birthday bonanza in July, and then we have a gap until Christmas. So that actually works quite well. But yeah, if you're born around Christmas time, I mean, my mum was born on December 24th. And their wedding anniversary was December the 22nd. So they had a little batch of celebrations all in one go.
We've got hellos, did I say, from Leslie, Sarah, and Malcolm. Leslie said she needs closure of the main story at the end of the book.
Yes. I mean, obviously there are elements that continue from book to book, because my detective has her life and her relationships, and they carry on from book to book. That's an ongoing thread. But the main plot, basically the murder investigation, that needs to be resolved, I think, at the end of the book. I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, there are many reasons why crime fiction is so popular. Many reasons. I mean, I could talk about this for hours. But one of the reasons I think we like crime fiction is that terrible things do happen, but by the and everything is chaotic. But by the end of the book, we do feel that some sort of moral order has been restored because the killer is caught. And we don't always have that feeling in real life, do we? So I think that's one of the reasons why we like crime fiction. It's goodies and baddies, isn't it? And we want the goodies to win in the end.
I know I've asked you this before, but like, you've put 23, 24 into Geraldine now. Do you think you're going to wrap her up at any time?
Well, I was actually thinking of finishing at book 20. And my publisher was, don't kill Geraldine. And they wanted more. So they asked for 2 more and then another 2. So it's a little bit driven by readers. As long as readers keep reading the books and wanting more, my publisher will want to keep publishing them. And what do? You know, as an author, if I've got a publisher who's asking me to write more books, I'm not going to say no, am I? I mean, I'm very conscious that I am so fortunate. And I've felt a little bit churlish at one point, because I was saying to my husband, oh, I've got to write another 2 Geraldine Steele books. I mean, there are people who would give their right arm to be in my position. So I do love writing them. It's great fun. So I can't really say. I mean, when I wrote the first in the series, I never imagined it would ever get published, let alone become the first in a long-running series. So who knows? I mean, I shall keep going as long as people want to keep reading the books. I was particularly pleased. The 22nd book has just come out. I think it came out in August. I get a bit confused when they come out. And I was particularly pleased. The first couple of reviews both said that they were just, you know, impressed, whatever, by how I managed to keep the stories fresh. Because the one thing that you don't want to do, and what has become a bit of a challenge now, is to make sure that I'm not repeating old stories, that I'm coming up with new ideas. And so that is a bit of a challenge now, so many books in. And in fact, in one of my books, one of my recent books, I won't tell you which one, I came up with an idea and I thought my publisher isn't going to go with this. It's just so ridiculous. It's so far-fetched. But anyway, they did, and it got published. And reviewers were saying things like, wow, I never would have imagined that being in a crime story, and it's so original. And I thought, yeah, okay, I got away with that one. So I just keep trying to come up with slightly different slants on things so that each book is a little bit surprising and different from the others. But they're all murder investigations. They all start with the body, and by the end of the book, the killer gets caught. Hope that's not too much of a spoiler.
Malcolm says it's always down to readers. And Sarah wants to know how you keep track of your characters, especially across a long-running series. So do you use a spreadsheet or a folder?
Good question. I mean, when I started out, and I started out with a 3-book deal, and then we've gone from deal to deal. When I started out, I thought, I don't need to write things. I've got it all in my head. But then as the series progresses, it did become a little bit more difficult. Now I'm so far into the series that I actually know my characters pretty well. But I'm extremely fortunate. I have a wonderful editor who has been with the series right from book 1, and she remembers everything. So she will always put me right if I get something a little bit wrong. But generally, it's relatively easy because everything is online now, and I just go back and look things up. So I can, I have to go back and look at what time of year was the last book. How old is Geraldine's niece going to be by now? I try not to place things too specifically in time. I actually, when I started out, I had no idea this was going to be a series. Had I known, I would have started with Geraldine being rather younger than she is at the beginning of the series. She starts out being in her late 30s. And so now, kind of 24 books in, I'm having to sort of fudge it a little bit. And she doesn't age in real time. She's a bit like Poirot. She doesn't really age. So other than that, each book is different. And I know my main characters pretty well now. But it's a good question, yeah. And no, I don't keep spreadsheet. Do you know what? I mean, you'll laugh at me now. Probably shouldn't admit this in public, but I've never created a spreadsheet in my life. I wouldn't know how to do it. So I do have bits of paper, and I keep a list. I keep a list of things, just a document with a list of things. But no, I mainly just rely on my memory and hope for the best, really.
Malcolm spun off from that and asked if you remember the birth dates of characters.
He said, sorry, say that again?
Malcolm says, do you remember the birth dates of characters?
Do I remember the first what of characters? Oh, birthdays.
Yeah.
Birthdays. Yeah, no, they tend not to have birthdays. I'm not very good with birthdays. I always forget other people's birthdays. Sometimes forget when my own birthday is, but no, they tend not to have birthdays because, to be perfectly honest, that would just be one more thing that I've got to try and remember. So no, they don't have birthdays. I just focus on the murder investigation. That's it. I mean, Christmas can come into my books because that's easy to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, hence the Christmas book. Is it hard to write? Because I would imagine you don't write that during Christmas. How easy is it to get in the Christmas mood writing a Christmas book?
Oh yeah, I mean, you just use your imagination. I mean, it's like if it was difficult to get into the Christmas mood, then how difficult would it be to get inside the head of a killer? So no, I just make it up, really.
I was just wondering if you were sat writing the Christmas book with like a cracker hat on and Christmas songs in the background while you were writing. Makes it feel festive.
No, I mean, in the Poppy books are cozy crime, and in the Christmas book, everybody just has a jolly time at Christmas. They'll sit around the table and have a good time because by then the murder has been solved.
They're very different, aren't they? Because you've got a dog in them. Do you want to tell everyone who's watching about Poppy?
About Poppy? I've just seen you've got dinosaurs on your dress.
Mm-hmm.
Just noticed them. Okay, so you want to know about Poppy? Well, this story, everything's a story, isn't it? And this story starts a long time ago, many, many years ago. When I was 2, an Alsatian jumped up at me in the park and snapped at my face. I have no recollection of that incident, and I learnt about it as an adult, but it clearly had an impact on me because I've always been scared of dogs, particularly of Alsatians. And so if I went round to a friend's house who had a dog, they knew they had to put the dog in another room because I'd be nervous. So then my daughter told me she was getting a dog. And I actually said to her, I said, if you get a dog, I'm just not coming to your house. And she said, oh, Mum, you're going to love her. Well, you know what? They got this little rescue puppy, and she is so adorable. It's almost like a religious conversion for me. I can't walk past a small dog on the street now without wanting to stop and say hello. I'm still a bit nervous with big dogs, but I'm an absolute fan of small dogs. And I love this little dog so much that she inspired me to write the Poppy mystery tales, which are cozier than my Geraldine Steele police procedural novels, but they still involve a murder, and they're fun to write. They're fun to write. If you want to know what my daughter's dog is like, then read the very first book. It's called Barking Up the Right Tree. And in fact, any of the books, you'll see it. You'll read a description of her little dog that's based on the dog as accurately as I can. So she is the star of the books, really. She's not anthropomorphized in any way. She's just a dog, but she's a very clever dog, like the real Poppy is, and she helps to solve crimes.
Is she because you can have clever dogs? Have you read Lessons in Chemistry? There's like a really clever dog in there that knows like a load of words.
She is an extremely clever dog. I mean, I'm convinced she understands everything. So recently my daughter was looking after my other daughter's dog. Both my daughters have dogs. And in fact, my other daughter got a dog after Poppy joined the family. And so the second dog appears in the book that I've just finished writing, the next one, the 5th one in the series. And one time, so Poppy's human was looking after both dogs. Now, Poppy's not very interested in food. She's a small dog, and I think small dogs very often are not particularly motivated by food. Whereas Lily, the other dog, is a larger breed, and she's more interested in food. And so my daughter put Lily's food in one room and Poppy's food in another room. And Lily was quite interested. Poppy didn't really want to eat her dinner. And my daughter said to her, Poppy, you need to eat your dinner or Lily will come and eat it. Straight away, Poppy ate her dinner. And then she went in the other room and ate Lily's dinner as well. So I think she understood. I mean, she knows, she can see from what shoes my daughter or her partner are putting on whether they're going out or not. And if they put on going out shoes, as opposed to just slippers at home, she'll be by the front door waiting to be taken with them. She's a very, very clever dog. Although she doesn't seem to understand that she's never going to catch an aeroplane or a bird or even a squirrel, and she'll bark at aeroplanes to scare them off. So she's very clever, but she has her moments.
I think they all do, don't they? My parents' dog barks at anything that thinks is going anywhere near the garden.
Yeah. Oh, and if there's a fox in the garden, she goes absolutely crazy.
But he's like really friendly and likes everybody.
Yeah. She's very people. She's a bit nervous of other dogs. She was a rescue dog, so she can still be a little bit nervous, but she's very fortunate because they both work from home and they've got a big garden, and so she has a wonderful life, really, which is nice because she was not very well looked after when they first got her.
So you're like 4 books into that series. Is that going to be another long-running one, or do you think there's definitely an end of that one?
I don't know. I mean, I've just written the 5th one, and my publisher's quite sort of cautious. So if I say, do you want any more? He says, well, let's wait and see how the sales. It's all really driven by sales. I mean, publishing houses, they're businesses, and if the books are not selling, then they're not going to publish anymore. So if anybody wants to buy one of my books to keep the series going, I doubt if it'll go for as many books as Geraldine Steele. I mean, partly because I'd need to write about another 20 books in the series, and I don't know that I'm even going to be around for that long. But who knows? Who knows? I never say never, because you just don't know. You just don't know. And this is what I say again when I'm teaching creative writing. It's so important to get things right, because the chances are, if you're writing a book, nobody but your parents and your friends are ever going to read it. But there is a chance that it might be read by millions of people. So you just never know. You just never know. We just keep going and hope for the best. I mean, that's all any of us can do, really, isn't it? Keep going and hope for the best.
You often help work on like the CWA stuff as well, don't you? With like can you read like the New Blood or it's not New Blood, what's the word, debut? What's the ones you read for the CWA?
I chair the judging panel for it was called the Davy Dagger Award. The name has now changed to Emerging Talent Award. But this is an award for writers who are not yet published, have not yet been published, aspiring writers, really. And it's quite prestigious. So the winners generally end up with quite a decent publishing deal. And all the shortlisted authors, there's usually 6 on the shortlist, and their work is sent out to agents and publishers. So it's a really good step up for aspiring writers. So if there are any writers watching this who have not yet been published, do look up the Emerging Writers Award. It's a Dagger Award on the CWA, and it's a fantastic thing to win. I mean, I was shortlisted, not for that one because I was already published. I was shortlisted for the John Christie New Blood Dagger, which is for first novels, debut novels. But I chair the judges for the unpublished writers, yeah. And the CWA does a lot of work to support aspiring writers and new writers, which is wonderful. I mean, I feel very much that I've had a lot of help along the way, and I'm now pretty established, really. But I mean, I've had people like Lee Child and Martina Cole and Peter James and Jeff Deaver have all endorsed my books and been really kind about it, really generous. So it's nice to feel that I can give some help myself to new writers. The crime writing community is a very, very friendly and supportive community, and it's nice to be a part of that, really.
While we're on that, have you got any events and things coming up that you're doing?
Yes, I'm at a Noir at the Bar in St Albans next week. I'm doing a writing workshop, giving a workshop at a library on Saturday, Amersham Library. I've got a few more library events coming up. I can't remember them all really, but I like to do events in libraries, because I think if authors don't support libraries, then that's a bit bonkers, isn't it? Really. So yeah, I've got a few library events coming up, and what else? Next year, I've been invited to go and talk to a reading group in Cornwall. They're putting us up for 3 nights, and they've arranged 3 local libraries. So that's quite a nice little tour in Cornwall next year. What else are we doing? I'm kind of a little bit. I've been to so many literary festivals, been on so many panels, and I'm kind of pulling back a bit from that now, because I feel I've done so much of that, and there are so many other new writers coming along that I'm sort of stepping back a little bit, and we're actually going on a few holidays that are nothing to do with books, which is nice, which we haven't done for a while, because I've always been so busy going away with the books.
Fair enough. How do you ever have anyone wondering with the Geraldine series how Because there are a lot of murders in a small city, aren't there? Because Geraldine's based in York.
I know. It's a bit like Midsummer, isn't it? I mean, there's 2 or 3 murders in every book. But as I said earlier, I'm writing for readers now, and when I'm reading crime novels, that's the kind of thing I want to read. And I think people want to read that. And also it helps to obfuscate a little bit and make it confusing because, you know, perhaps in a book, I might have suggested that a certain character is the killer. And then, oh, that character gets killed. And the police realize it's the same killer. So that person can't have been the killer. You know, you can play around with it a bit as well. How do these 2 murders tie up, or do they? So it gives me more to play with, really, and it gives readers more to puzzle about and more to speculate about. And it adds a bit of, you know, a bit more drama as well. A bit more drama. If I feel that the narrative is beginning to slow down a little bit, needs a bit of jazzing up. Okay, let's have another murder.
You ever tempted to have any cold cases? Because York's like a wonderful historical city, isn't it? You probably have a slightly. You could take Geraldine back and have her investigate a like historical cold case.
What, have her go back, sort of prequels, you mean?
No, not a prequel. Like she's in the modern day, but investigating like a colder.
Oh, I see, a cold case. I've not done that. I've not done that yet. That's possible, but I think there's a bit more tension and drama if it's I don't know what you call it, a live case, I suppose, not a cold case, because then there's the sense that the killer is still around and they might be looking for another victim. Whereas a cold case is maybe not quite so, doesn't have quite the same urgency to it.
Although it depends when the cold case happened, because the killer could still be around, depending on.
Oh yeah, they still be around, yes. But if they haven't killed for quite a long time, then there isn't the same kind of tension as if you feel there's a killer stalking the streets looking for the next victim. But it's not something explored. I mean, I might do. It's not something I have explored yet. But yeah, you give me an idea. I mean, there is actually, having said that, in I think it's not in Deadly Will. It's in it's not Without Trace. I'm trying to think which book it's in. No, it might be in Deadly Will, actually. I think it is, yeah. In Deadly Will, there is actually, hang on, I'm holding it in the wrong place. There is actually a cold case in this that emerges as the current murder is being investigated. So I suppose in a way, yes, I have had a cold case.
Yeah, Donna said an unsolved cold case where the killer wasn't caught adds tension.
Yeah, yeah.
They thought they got away with it for 20 years or whatever.
Yes, I do have that actually in Deadly Will, in the latest book. It's not the main plot, it's a subplot, but it ties into the main plot. Yeah, so actually I have done that. Although I said I've never done that, I have. I tend to
like they caught the serial killer, didn't they, in America? There's like a serial killer in America that they caught through a familial DNA match.
It does happen, doesn't it? It does happen, yes. And cases that took place before DNA was around so much get solved. Yes, there was a case where a particular police officer had kept a coat and had not let anybody touch it. This was before DNA. Kept this coat, and then about 40 years later, I think the killer was identified. Although I think the killer had already gone to prison for another murder and had died in prison, but they found out who had committed this murder from so long ago, which I think probably gives the family some sense of closure. I mean, obviously, when somebody's been killed, there's never any real possibility of any restitution or even real comfort. But I think it must help to know that the killer has been caught, I think, to know what happened, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I've never been in that situation itself, but I think we all want to feel a sense that justice has been served, don't we? As far as it can be, because of course, I mean, in my books, there is a conclusion and there is a sense of closure because the killer is caught, but they don't really have a happy ending because characters have been killed. So you can never, you can never put back a life, can you? But there's a sense of justice being served, I think.
How do you manage to keep Geraldine and things on top of things like the science? Because I think people think DNA is like this big, like it's always really accurate, and it isn't always, depending on how long it's been left out or how it's handled.
Yes, and of course, people are becoming much more aware, aren't they, and are being very careful and can wear, a rubber coat and rubber gloves and wear a mask and be out in the open air. So there's very little DNA evidence left, minimize the evidence. Or the killer could be somebody that the victim knew. So yeah, obviously their DNA and fingerprints are all over the flat because they lived with them or whatever. So yeah, and there can be mistakes. I mean, I tend to try and present a reasonably positive image of the police in my books, because in my Geraldine Steele books, the police are the goodies and the killers are the baddies. And I know a lot of crime fiction, and some very, very successfully, blurs the lines quite a lot. And the police quite often are not such good guys, or there are, bent coppers, and there's corruption in the police force. But I tend not to deal with that side of things. I keep my kind of moral dividing line fairly clear. It's the killers who are the bad guys. It's goodies and bad.
Do you find it though, because obviously from when you started writing them to now, the procedures of the police and the science and everything will have changed, even while you've been writing?
Yeah.
How hard is it to kind of keep up to date with all of that?
Yeah, things change all the time, and police procedures change and their acronyms change. And in fact, when villains, criminals go into prison, they will sell information to prisoners who are coming out of prison, because the ones who are coming out of prison are out of date with what's going on. It's a bit of a game of cat and mouse, really. The police are always updating their procedures, and the criminals are always trying to work out what the police are doing. So yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult, but I always say that I'm not writing a handbook on police procedure. If you want to research police procedure, there are some excellent writers out there, Graham Bartlett and Steve, I can't remember the name now, but there are retired police officers who write crime fiction, and they will know about the procedures, at least at the time when they were working. So I'm just telling stories, and it's goodies and baddies. And if I fudge my police procedure a little bit to serve the story, then so be it. The story comes first for me. But you can find out a lot of information from retired police officers. They're always very helpful and want to tell you all sorts of anecdotes. It's difficult to get information from acting police officers because they're very cautious about giving anything away. They're just not allowed to. And I've been very fortunate that I have advisors who are acting police officers. I'm never allowed to acknowledge them by name because they're not supposed to tell members of the public anything. But that's been really, really helpful. But yes, things change all the time. And I mean, forensic science is it's phenomenal what can be achieved now. You can walk into a room and breathe, and they can detect your DNA. They can identify your gender, your eye color, fabric touching. They can identify not only that you were in a particular place, but they can put it within a time frame. They can say you were there within these 2 weeks. I mean, it is quite remarkable what they can do. But at the end of the day, it's important in my novels that it's detective work that solves the crime. Geraldine thinks, actually, what if this didn't exactly happen as the witness said, or whatever, you know, she spots something, and that's how the crime gets solved. And with the Poppy mystery tales, it's a little bit simpler, but my little dog in the books, she kind of digs up some evidence or something. But it's important that your main character has some sort of agency. And I agree, it's becoming more and more difficult. And also, I mean, my detective, Geraldine, she's a DI. Now, in the real world, detective inspectors spend a lot of their time sitting behind a desk juggling budgets. Well, that's the reality. But it doesn't make for a particularly exciting book, does it? So my detective is always first on the scene and interviewing witnesses, which she wouldn't actually do in real life, because any decision, any action that is taken is now organised centrally. So she might report that this particular person needs to be interviewed, and then somebody higher up than her would send somebody out to interview them. But she does it herself. She makes her own decisions, because I'm writing a story. As I say, I'm not writing a handbook on police procedure, and I don't think that is what my readers want to read. And I do have quite a few fans on the police force. They're fine with it because they want to read a good story. They don't want to read that, you know, somebody spent so many hours a day writing up reports and so many hours a day sitting at a desk. That's not very exciting, is it? Really?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's important to get things like the science right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do take advice about things, and I find that people are very, very helpful. I had one particular query about DNA a few years ago, and I looked it up online. I couldn't understand a word of any of it because I'm not a scientist, but I just had this one question, and so the research that I did was to find out who was the leading expert in that particular area in the UK at that time. I tracked him down. It was somebody, a professor at Dundee University, and I emailed him, and he was enormously helpful. And I find that people who really know their subject are generally pretty clear in their answers, because they know what they're talking about and they understand it and they can explain it clearly. So I'm always very careful with my emails. I would never phone somebody I don't know, but I think an email is not so intrusive. People don't have to answer. And I try and narrow it down so that all they have to do is answer yes or no. And I always say, you know, I appreciate you're busy and you may not have time to answer, but if you could you just tell me, is it this or that? And most of the time, people send me really long answers because they're so happy to share their knowledge and so helpful. So a bit like, what was that old advert with the AA or something? I can't remember. But, you know, I don't know, but I know a man who does. I took advice from a police ballistics expert who, again, I was not allowed to acknowledge. And so it's a question of, I need to know this. Who can I ask that will know the answer? Sometimes there is no one clear answer, but at least somebody who's working in the field and who's an expert in the field will come up with something that I can't really be challenged on, because this is what the experts are saying, might not be right. So that's how I manage the science, because I don't know anything about, well, I did physics O level, there we go. Shows my age, doesn't it?
I was just going to say, showing my age, that the thing I love about science is how quickly it changes. And when I studied my degree at university, we were doing a module on the Human Genome Project, and it got published before our module. And the teacher came in and was just like, "This is history now."
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like amazing. We were sat there going, "Yeah."
Yeah, and things change so fast, don't they? Things change so fast that I think realistically it's impossible to keep up with things, because it can take up to a year for a book to be published, to actually hit the shelf when you start writing it. And I mean, it takes me 6 months to write the book, has to go through the editing process, all the rest of it. So even if I'm completely up to date when I'm writing the book, it might be out of date by the time it's published. And I try not to set my books at any particular time, because I like the idea that readers are thinking this could be happening now. So they're contemporary, but they're not placed at a particular time in a particular year. But I think it was the second Geraldine Still I wrote. So this is going back about 15 years or so. I had, get this, I had a young woman running to the letterbox to post a check to pay her electricity bill. Now, does that date the book? Would any young person pay their electricity bill by check these days? I mean, who writes checks nowadays? So however much you try to remain contemporary, the world changes, doesn't it?
Do they
So,
even give people checkbooks anymore?
I mean, I can't remember the last time I wrote a check. I mean, you can pay in checks on your phone, but I'm occasionally given a check for something, but they're few and far between. Few and far between. I mean, I do some work for the Royal Literary Fund. I go into a university one day a week to support, the staff and students there with their writing. And when I started about 10 years ago with the Royal Literary Fund, they used to pay by check. They used to send a check in the post. But now it's all done by bank transfer. So much easier, so much quicker.
Donna says her nan still uses checks.
Sorry?
Donna says her nan still uses checks.
Yeah, I mean, my dad used to, yeah. I mean, people do, but I say you can pay them in on your phone now, can't you? So that's okay. I occasionally get a check if I'm giving a talk at the WI or something, and they give me a little fee, and sometimes they do that by check. Pay that money.
Apparently, your nan uses online banking.
Yeah.
Tech savvy. My parents don't.
Not everybody does. No, not everybody. And not everybody has an iPhone. Not everybody can pay in on the phone. But we were on holiday last week. We were in Italy, and there was a gentleman who was 85, and his daughter had bought him an iPhone, and she was trying to phone him on WhatsApp, and somehow they couldn't sort of connect. But so we took a picture of him and his wife on his phone, and we sent it to her via WhatsApp. And so she got the picture of him, and he thought this was wonderful. I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? I think one has to be open to these things, but I'm not a fan of technology. But when it works, it's amazing. I wrote one novel that was set in the Seychelles, and the manuscript was due to be sent off to my editor while we were away. And so I was just sitting on a beach in Seychelles and emailed my manuscript off to my editor in London. I mean, it's just, how amazing is that? I remember the first time we were in Spain, I think, years ago, on one of these tourist buses. And I took a picture of something we went past, and I sent it to, I must have emailed it or something, to my family back home. And so they were looking at it at the same time as I was. And it was just, wow, it is quite incredible, isn't it? What technology can do.
It's nice when you have those moments, isn't it? I took a picture with my brother once. He flew me on holiday, and we took a photo together, on the plane. And my husband was like, "That'll be up in your parents' house, before we get back from holiday."
Yeah.
He was like, "It will be in a frame." And we rang them to sort of say we were there and that my brother had flown us. And then they were like, "Yeah, we know, we've already got the picture up."
I mean, it is wonderful when it works, isn't it? I mean, look at this. You're in Leeds, I'm in. We're chatting away.
Exactly, it's great, isn't it? These kind of things are good as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that came out of lockdown that's
yes,
yeah. thing, I think.
Yes, and of course, there's generation now of kids who've grown up not knowing any different. I mean, if you want to scare a room full of teenagers, you say to them, "What would you do if the entire internet crashed?" And they look at you like, "What? But
it depends on the teenagers. I made a Duran Duran reference in my lesson today, and I was like, no one is going to get this. Like, I've just aged myself ridiculously. And then one of the kids was like, yeah, solid band. And then it rattled off a list of the songs that they liked. So I was like, you know.
Yeah. Things change so fast, don't they? But, yeah. And the kids know. I mean, I've got, our granddaughter is just 8. And if she wants to look at something, she wanted to look at something on YouTube on the telly. And so she takes the remote, she just boom, 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 there's me and my husband saying, right, okay, we've got to go to here and go there. And she's just 1, 2, 3, finds it like it's nothing. But of course, they've grown up with it, haven't they? So, or are growing up with it.
What are you working on at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm sort of between books because I'm actually waiting for the edits for the next Geraldine Steele, which will be number 23. So I should be thinking about my number 24, but I think I'm going to wait till I get the edits for number 23, get that sort of put to bed, and then start thinking about number 24. I'm also waiting for the edits for the 5th Poppy Mystery Tale. So I'm kind of a little bit in between. But I do some editing for other writers, which I really enjoy. And so I've got another manuscript coming in tomorrow, I think. So what am I working on at the moment? Well, I'm not really well, actually, no, I am writing something. I have this book that I've been writing. I say book, it's not really, but I have this manuscript, this narrative that I've been writing for a while, on and off. It's my kind of go-to writing project when I'm not writing for a publisher, for a deadline. And I keep tinkering with it. And I did send it off to my agent, but then I said, no, hang on, don't read it yet, because I'm going to do some more work on it. So I'm working a little bit on that, but whether or not that will ever see the light of day, I don't know. But I'm enjoying writing it. So I always have something on the go, something on the boil. So and I've not been doing as much reading as I would like, because I've been writing so much with the deadlines that I had coming up. So I might delve into a bit more reading, maybe something a bit lighter, like Alexander Hall Smith, No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency. I'm feeling like something a bit lighter at the moment. I go in phases, but the book that I'm writing is a little bit darker. So, but at the back of my mind, I'm kind of thinking about ideas for the next Geraldine Steele. In fact, when we were in Italy, I do have my first victim. When we were in Italy, somebody there wanted to be a victim in my next book. So I think I'd had a couple of glasses of wine. I said, yeah, you could be a victim. And so we were discussing whether his wife's going to kill him, and she was going, yeah, that's quite possible. So I've got a victim, but I've not got a murderer in mind yet. And that's really what drives my books. I need to have the murderer and their motive in place, and then everything else falls into place around them. And I haven't got my murderer yet, but that can hit me at any time. But I've got a bit of time. I always say, when people talk about writer's block, which I have to say I've never really suffered from, but the best cure for writer's block is to have a publisher's deadline. And I've been extremely fortunate that since my very first manuscript was accepted, I've always had a deadline from a publisher. So I just have to keep going. And I think if I don't have a deadline, then I wouldn't write as much as I do. And I always say, when I'm teaching creative writing, I always say to writers, if you don't have an external deadline, like from a publisher, then set yourself deadlines. But I don't know how long I'm going to keep going. I don't want to keep going until the point that people say, oh, she's written herself out, she's past it, which does happen with some writers. So I'll see. But so far, so good. Seems to be going well. I mean, book 22, as I say, had good good reviews. And book 23, which has gone off for editing, I think is quite a good one. It's having that kind of twist, so it's not too obvious. So readers think they know what's happened, but actually then it's something slightly different. Because you don't want, in crime fiction, you don't want to be too predictable, because I think readers like to speculate and they like to try and work out who the killer is. So there have to be some red herrings. But of course, most of my readers are very sophisticated in the genre, and I throw in a misdirection and they will say, oh yeah, she's trying to misdirect us there. That's obviously not the killer, because she's trying to imply that it is the killer. So then sometimes you can double bluff and it actually is the killer. So it's a question of trying to stay one step ahead of your readers if you can. I find that very difficult. So yeah, I need to have a little think about the next one. So although I'm not actually writing at the moment, it's in the back of my mind. It's always going on there, because I always say writing is not the typing on the keyboard. Writing a book is not typing, it's what goes on up here. I mean, I type very fast. I could churn a book out in a week, wouldn't be very good. But it's the thinking that makes the book. So what am I working on at the moment? I'm not actually sure, because I think somewhere in there I'm working on the next Geraldine Steele, but I haven't yet put pen to paper, as it were. And I think once I start writing, that's when I really find out what I'm writing about.
Donna doesn't think you'll get many edits.
What, of my manuscripts?
Yeah.
They have got a lot lighter. My very first manuscript was quite severely edited, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I was quite shocked at how often I was repeating myself and reiterating. But now, as I'm writing, and when I go through it, I can kind of see what my editor is going to say and self-edit a lot more than I used to. So edits are a lot lighter, but I still need an editor. And I think everybody needs a second pair of eyes on what they've written, because you can get a bit carried away, or there's something that really works particularly well for you for some personal reason, but it might not work for other people. And so it needs another pair of eyes. But yes, the edits of my books have become quite a lot lighter. I mean, my very first manuscript, I had to cut about 50% of it out, because I had so much going on. It was just crazy. The reader wouldn't have known what was going on. And I think nowadays it might have been more difficult to find a publisher for that. But I was very fortunate at the time. And now, as I say, I spend quite a lot of time editing other people's work. And that's good fun, because I think as an editor, the key is that you need to understand what a writer is trying to do. And then you see how they're not quite doing it, not quite succeeding. And then you have to guide them into writing the book that they think they've written, but it's not quite there yet. So in terms of what I'm working on at the moment, I mean, this evening I will be checking that we have enough fish fingers and chocolate ice cream in the house, because my granddaughter's coming to stay for 2 nights. And there is, there's a lot of life goes on, isn't there, as well as writing.
Can you tell us, we've only got a few minutes left, so tell us what you've read recently and really enjoyed.
Recently, yeah, I read a #1 Ladies Detective Agency, which I really, really enjoy. And I have to look at my list. I keep a list of books that I want to read, and then tick them off, because I've got such a terrible memory, and I've not been reading that much lately. Oh yeah, I read a wonderful book called Clytemnestra. I don't know if you've come across that. It's by just trying to find it. I can't remember her name now, but can't find it. Oh yeah, here it is. Constanza Casati. Just beautifully written. And I read, what else? Oh yeah, I've read a couple of Dick Francis. I only discovered him fairly recently. I mean, I've been aware of him, Dick Francis, of course, for years, but I only started reading him fairly recently. And he's such a good storyteller. I really enjoy his books. So if I'm in the mood for just a good story, I might read a Dick Francis. And I also discovered quite recently Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think that's right. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who's a Nigerian girl, and again she writes beautifully. I'm a sucker for good prose, and I enjoy Philippa Gregory, reading historical novels. I've come across William Boyd as well, who I'd been aware of for a long time but hadn't read, and he also writes beautifully. And I sometimes get sent proof copies of things to read, so I mix it up a bit, really. But my reading has been a bit lighter lately, although Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's books are fairly hard hitting, some of them. But it sort of varies, and also we get we watch series on television and tend to revisit them. We've started rewatching The Sopranos. I don't know if you ever saw that. We never saw it first time round. We watched it maybe about a year ago. It's a very, very good series. And so we usually have a series on the go. And somehow the time just seems to go, doesn't it? Particularly when the weather's been nice and you can just sit in the garden. And we've had quite a lot of tomatoes this year, which is good, and plums. Do you have a garden?
No, not really. I've got some herb pots.
That's nice.
A little bit of backyard that I've got, but it's not wouldn't call it a garden.
Do you use the herbs in your cooking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's very
rhubarb as well. Because I think we're just on the edge of like the rhubarb triangle, so we've got rhubarb plant in our garden.
Yeah.
Which
nice.
Are not garden, but yeah, we've got rhubarb plant which produces a pie or two a year.
That's nice. Yeah, we had a load of plums, and in fact, Michael, he stewed a load of them, and he puts them in bags, puts them in the freezer for the winter because we have too many to eat. It's nice to grow things. This is not about books, is it? But there is a gardener in one of my books, Without Trace. So there's a kind of link, I suppose.
And then we've got a couple of minutes left, so remind everyone who's watching what they're going to go away and buy.
Yeah, okay. Well, any of the Geraldine Steele books. This is the latest one. They do work as standalones, so if you haven't read the others in the series, you can read this one without knowing the others. And if you're looking for Christmas presents, Poppy's Christmas Cracker is out. I think it's already out in paperback, and will make a good stocking filler, I think, or a good Christmas present. Certainly for anyone who is a dog lover, I think it's a must. But I would say that, wouldn't I?
Yeah, I mean, all animals are.
Yeah.
So.
And it's cozy. I mean, you can see from the cover, we were quite careful with the covers to try and make it clear that these were not. I'm known for my Geraldine Steele series, and these are quite, they're not particularly gory at all, but they're fairly gritty, serious crime thrillers. And we wanted to make it clear with the Poppy Mystery Tales that this was very different, so that readers wouldn't be disappointed, wouldn't be expecting a really serious, strong, powerful crime thriller, and then they get a book about a little dog solving crimes. So they're more cozy, really. So yes, that's what everybody has to rush out and buy.
Brilliant. And that's all that's left to say is thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Always nice to chat to you.